week's episode of the On Barn Podcast. This is Mitch Calandra, your host. I'm actually going live on TikTok today. So if you guys are interested, from now on, pretty much every time I do a solo episode, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it with a guest. But pretty much every time that I do a solo episode, I'll throw it up on live like I'm doing right now, just to see if anybody, wants to follow along with it live every week. I got to be a little bit more on my A game. Can't say anything that'll get me canceled or, anything like that. So I'm going to try to keep it good and keep it to where I don't have to go back and edit anything out, and keep it to where I can keep going live on TikTok. But I'm still going to, be bringing it. So I want to get right into this episode. The first thing I want to talk about today is just last week's episode with one of my buddies, Merrick Krause. If you haven't gotten a chance to see that episode, I definitely encourage you to go check it out. And we talk about, how we got released from baseball, just some of the stuff that we experienced throughout our pro ball career. And that's actually what I want to talk about just to start off this episode, just going based off what me and Krause did talk about last week. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows that when I talk about baseball, some of the experiences I had in pro ball and things like that, I don't want it to come across as, something that's going to be, taken as a negative, because I really do love baseball. So everything that I say is just my personal experience that I went through. It has nothing to do with the game of baseball, even though there obviously is some things wrong with what's going on in the minor leagues. You can hear a nice baby crying in the background. I don't know if you guys picked that up on the mic. But it's actually the little one's birthdays today. It's Nick and Allie's twins' birthday today. So I actually shout out to them for a nice happy birthday today. They're 2. So they've been on one today, getting some gifts. It's been actually a pretty fun day so far. But getting back to it, I just want to make sure that I'm talking about, things like, chasing it still, right? I want to still make sure kids, when they listen to this show, I'm going to have a lot of people listening from probably my new job where I'm working with a lot of high school players. I already know some of them follow me on TikTok and Instagram and those types of things. So I want to make sure when I'm speaking about baseball, it still stays in a positive light, just because there were obviously some negative things that happened to me in my career, happened to some of the guys that are going to be on this show as guests. So I just think, if I make sure I keep it in a positive light, I think it's a better idea in terms of just bitching and complaining and everything like that about how pro ball is, because at the end of the day, it's still a business. So those teams can, run their teams however they want. And I respect that. But that also doesn't mean, you can't be nice in the game of baseball. You can't be, treat others with, some sort of respect. I know one thing that I always watch a lot of videos on is just Gary Vee and Mark Cuban talking business. And one thing that they are consistent about is that the businesses where they've treated people properly, they've been nice, are the businesses that, really tend to take off and just are the better ran businesses in terms of longevity and things like that. So I think in terms of a team, in terms of a baseball team, in terms of any sports team, I think it would make sense to kind of do it the same way. So if it is, in terms of just treating everybody on the team with respect, to get, just being open and honest about, what their view on them is as a player, whether it's positive or negative. I think a lot of guys in pro ball would respect it a little bit more if they were just open and they just basically said, listen, you're here on our list right now. And this is what you would have to do to move up on our list. I think those kinds of conversations would go a long way, and they'd have guys stick around more. But who knows? Maybe that's just not what they want. But I just feel like last thing I'll say about baseball is I do, love it. So when I talk about like the negative side of things, I just want to make sure that it's still coming across, like I said, in a way where I think baseball is super positive. I'm kind of checking out TikTok over here. This is the first time I've gone live. I'm seeing that there's 154 people in there. This is the On Barn Podcast. If you guys are liking what you're hearing, it's a show about, I'm going to be having some athletes on, different guests on, talking about their experiences, whether it was in the professional side of things or college or just the recruiting process, things like that. And then usually towards the back half of the show, I just go through some thoughts of the week about sports, about life, pretty much anything that you can think of. So I appreciate you guys like watching on the live on TikTok. So I'm just going to continue to move on a little bit. We got the playoffs coming up for baseball as well. So I plan on talking a lot more baseball, talking about some playoffs. I'm excited to see some of the young guys that are going to be making their playoff debut this year. Hopefully Spencer Strider gets healthy. Obviously, I'm excited to see Mike Harris, Vaughn Grissom. Hopefully Bryce Elder's on that playoff roster, and getting some innings in the playoffs as well. I would love to see some of my buddies contribute to that for their success in the playoffs this year, because that would obviously just make watching the playoffs really cool. Now, in terms of teams that I think could compete for it, I just think the Mets going into it are really the front runner. And just that two-headed monster at the front there, I just think that it's going to be hard to beat them in any kind of series if those two are healthy and they have a healthy pitching staff on top of that, because I really do think that their team top to bottom is probably, the best roster overall. And, DeGrom and Scherzer are just going to be tough to beat. But yeah, that's what I got on baseball this week. Didn't want to talk too much about it. I know last week's episode, the first, I want to say 30 minutes or so are all talking about baseball. So if you want to go, hear more about that, if you haven't checked out that episode yet, go listen to that one. That's where we get into a lot of detail about some things in our career. And as I have guests on the show in pro ball or who played pro ball, that's when I'll get into the details and things like that. So let's just dive right in. So I've been calling this section the thoughts of the week. And I just basically go over anything that happened in sports, anything that I saw on TV, and, just anything that I'm really thinking about throughout the week. So the first thing that I've been thinking a lot about is just where I want to live, right? So not only location, but what kind of place. I've experienced a lot of different locations throughout my, last 3 years, especially in pro ball. And I just think it's kind of crazy how different each state is, how different each location is, in terms of all different kinds of things. And one of those things is that I'm seeing out here in Arizona. I've spent a decent amount out here in Arizona for the last couple years. And I'm not going to lie. I just don't sometimes feel like the hometown vibe, right? Where I'm from on Long Island, by no means is it like big into sports or like have a huge sports following in the town, or the high school sports really mean, to the extent of like a Texas. It's not at that level of like Florida or Texas or Georgia where, they bleed their high school colors and they love Friday Night Lights and all that stuff. But in terms of hometown pride, Floral Park, where I grew up, definitely had a lot of it. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about a little bit, is just, I definitely want to find something where the sports and the town just comes together. Cause I think we're seeing less and less places like that, lately, and definitely here in Arizona. I think it could eventually get to that point, but so many of these new towns are just so new and they just haven't been around for that long to build that camaraderie, to kind of get an identity of that town. So that's kind of what I've been toying with. I know me and Nicole have been talking about, different places we're going to want to live, or possibly even just try. And something for me that's big is that what feeling do you get about saying that you're from this place? And I think that's super important, even though I'll probably never go back to Floral Park, in terms of living there, in terms of like having pride from where I grew up. That's definitely something that Floral Park provided me. So yeah, moving on, kind of jumping into football. That's a lot of what I'm going to be talking about on this show. I love football, especially this time of year. Well, it'll be mostly, playoff baseball and a lot of football. And dude, after 2 weeks of football, I just think it feels so great to have football back, and more specifically, have fantasy football back. I know it sounds so stupid, but I bet you a lot of guys will agree with me when I say this. I just think fantasy football kind of just gives us something to look forward to, gives us, a reason to, Be excited about a Tuesday. Be excited about a Wednesday. If you don't have anything else going on, there's always fantasy football things in terms of each day of the week. Obviously, Sunday games, Monday games, Tuesday you figure out that waiver wire, see who you want to pick up, all that good stuff. See if there's any steals that you can grab that people would need, backup running backs, that kind of stuff. Wednesdays, usually when you see the trades. I don't know about everybody else's league, but Wednesday seems to be the day where a couple trades end up going through, or at least some offers start to flow. Thursday, we're right back to games. Friday, obviously college football. Saturday, college football. And then Sunday, obviously, we're right back. So that's just after 2 weeks of the football season going through, having that going on, being able to talk about it with everybody in terms of my fiance, my brother, my family, everybody's loving football. And, a lot of people are now playing fantasy football. I was over at my brother's friend's house and we were all there. Everybody was in our fantasy league. And even some of the wives, had mentioned, oh, does anybody have that in your fantasy does anybody have him on your fantasy team? And I just think it's starting to grow. And I think fantasy football is just one of those things that everybody can play, even if you just randomly click your team. And it can just make the games more entertaining, as opposed to, when you're watching, let's say this year, you're watching the Jets versus who's a crappy team, the Texans. You're watching the Jets versus Texans where, week 10, if that's the game, not many people would want to watch that for any relevance to the season, but there could be 5, 6 guys that are fantasy relevant in those games that make people tune in. I think it's part of the reason why the NFL ratings are just across the board through the roof. So yeah, that's really, it's just been nice to have football back and kind of get back to the schedule with football included, which I enjoy. Just quickly running over some college football stuff. One video that I want you guys to check out, you could definitely go check it out on TikTok. I've seen it like a billion times on there, is the North Dakota State tight end, Hunter Luepke, I want to say his name is. I apologize if I'm getting that name wrong. But dude, his touchdown celebration, he does a leg dab. He jumps up in the air, really sells it. And does the leg dab, and it really was cracking me up. I was watching the video over and over again. Like I said, I keep seeing different people post it. So if you haven't seen it, it's quite the celebration, and it's hilarious. Seems to get the crowd up and going for sure. Next thing, I said it on my first solo episode that I did a couple weeks ago, that I didn't really watch Hard Knocks. I saw some clips, and I saw some, posts about it. But I never watched an episode. Haven't watched one episode of it. I don't have HBO, so or Showtime, whatever it's on. So I haven't been watching it. But it's really hard to not get excited about the Lions. Okay, whether Jared Goff is the guy who's gonna, give this team a run, I don't know yet. I think he can lead them to the playoffs, and I am starting to think it's a good chance he does that. But if Aiden Hutchinson and their defense can step up and start playing a little bit better, not give up so many points, I think they have a chance to really, be a good team for a lot of years moving forward. I mean, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown in my dynasty league, and to be honest, it's been really hard to kind of contain myself and not be excited about him, considering the run he's on right now is has literally never been done. I forget who he's, trying to break the record for, with some sort of consistency type thing in his first however many games, or over a 10-game stretch, whatever it is. He's up against some big name. I can't think of who it was. But I know this week, if he, accomplishes certain numbers, it's going to be I think it's Antonio Brown. If he accomplishes certain numbers this week, he'll be the first person ever to do a bunch of stuff. So I'm trying not to overreact, but I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think DeAndre Swift, TJ Hawkinson, even DJ Chark are guys that are really good players, and now they're all there. I think they're young, and I think Dan Campbell, obviously unbelievable coach. I think he's an unbelievable motivator, which I think at the end of the day is the most important thing. So moving on from that, kind of keeping it in the football and the NFL world, should the Steelers go with Kenny Pickett? I'm a big Steelers fan. They're my favorite team by far. I've just been battling it in my head whether or not we should go to him and see if he can get us going and improve our team, or we should just wait it out with Trubisky and see if he can get it going. Because I think Trubisky has some talent. I think he's a solid player, and I think he can potentially lead us to the playoffs. But I think Kenny Pickett just adds a little bit more excitement, a little bit more upside. Obviously, he was a first-round pick. Not that Trubisky wasn't, but he's been in the league. We know what he is. So I don't know. I know it's everybody in the media is battling back and forth to whether or not they should, start Pickett, sit him, keep sitting him. I'm getting the vibe that I just don't think it's going to happen for at least another couple weeks. But I gotta imagine the pressure if we keep losing and Trubisky doesn't play better. I gotta imagine the pressure is gonna start to, influence Mike Tomlin, but at the end of the day, Mike Tomlin is Mike Tomlin, so he's going to do whatever he wants and what he thinks is right for Kenny Pickett and the team, obviously. I gave a lot of shit. I gave a lot of shit to the TV shows and all like the football analysts that basically all picked the Buffalo Bills to make it to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. And I just, after 2 weeks, I'm starting to think I'm nervous. I'm nervous that nobody's going to be able to beat the Bills. I still think it's going to be tough for them to win the Super Bowl. Obviously, the AFC is really good. But if they get home field advantage, if Bills Mafia comes out there in bunches and they do their thing all year and they clinch that 1 seed and get home field advantage, I really do think that they're going to be hard to beat now. I hate that I'm saying this because I thought they were going to be like maybe a year away still. But I'm not going to lie. It's pretty crazy how good the Buffalo Bills look and how dominating they look. So I'm curious to see if they keep that up, and I'm curious to see, what happens moving forward. This weekend's going to be cool. I think it's Buffalo versus Miami. I think a lot of people are jumping on that Miami hype train. Miami is a cool team to be a fan of. It's a party city. Everybody, Tyreek Hill is getting everybody fired up. A lot of hype around Tua now. It's feels like it's starting to shift to where people are going to start to jump on the Tua hype train. And I'm curious. I'm curious to see how it plays out. I think it could go either way, to be honest. I'm really indifferent. I used to think Tua didn't necessarily have the greatest arm talent, but I mean, he throws a super accurate ball. You can tell that offense and that coach they know what they're doing. It seems like it's cut from that same cloth that we were talking about last week a little bit with, Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp basically being wide open in the middle of the field, even though obviously the defenses should be kind of locked in on those kinds of players. But I did notice, I just lost my train of thought there for a second, but I did notice just the Bills being absolute filth this weekend in dominating fashion. All right, next thing, kind of moving on, still on the football topic, but a little bit off the field. Is Travis and Jason Kelce's podcast. I'm going to tag them in this little clip that I'm about to say about them right now. And I just got to say, hearing, Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce just talk to each other after games during the week, kind of give their own perspective of each other's performances and also their own performances, kind of giving what they were thinking, what was said on the field, all that good stuff. So if you guys haven't had a chance to check out, I can't think of the name of it. I don't know why I can't think of the name of their podcast. I forgot to write it down. But Travis and Jason Kelce's podcast is some funny stuff. It's just really interesting to hear, the thought process of what's going on in some of the situations that we do see on Sunday, and for them to have a couple of days to think about it, kind of process it, and then kind of gather their thoughts and display it in that podcast, I think is pretty cool. And I'm definitely going to be listening to that every week. The one cool thing that I did hear them talk about this week was when Travis Kelce kind of got power bombed by Derwin James. And in the week before on their episode, they actually did talk about how, Derwin James was so unbelievable, how he was excited to play against him, how he respected him, but he smashes across the middle. And of course, Travis Kelce catches that ball, and all of a sudden, Derwin James comes in and wrecks him, grabs him, basically suplexes to the ground. I think on the episode, Jason Kelce says he superplexed him or something like that. And Travis said a couple plays later, Derwin James, was close to him on the field and basically looked at him and was like, "You good?" And Travis was like, "Yeah, I'm good," after he just absolutely wrecked him. So hearing that perspective from Travis Kelce, and also hearing kind of Jason rip on him a little bit as a brother, I felt like was super entertaining. So if you haven't, like I said, if you haven't gotten a chance to check that out, podcast is pretty interesting. All right, one random thought, and I hope if I post this little clip that I'm about to say on TikTok, I hope it finds the right audience, because I just don't know if this aged people is necessarily on TikTok a bunch. But one thing I've been thinking about is just, I feel like a lot of people on TikTok, a lot of people on social media, because of social media, I think a lot of people think professional athletes, what they do is not as fantastic, not as great as it actually is. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot of praise. There's more praise than ever for athletes because of social media and things like that. But I do think the skill that it takes to get there, and the difficulty in timing and situation that it takes to excel at some of these sports at the professional level is taken for granted a little bit. So I think like a show for me that I would love to come back, not that I think it would actually have some social impact, like I just talked about a little bit, but I just think it would be a nice comedic relief, and just give people actual footage of professional athletes wrecking just your average Joes. And that kind of leads me into the show I'm talking about, which is Pros versus Joes. So I hope one day, at some point, somebody with a lot of money kind of comes, kind of funds the project and brings that show back. And if you don't know what that show is, it's a show where basically they had former professional athletes. I feel like sometimes they were even current professional athletes basically go up against a group, 3 or 4 just average guys, hence average Joes, Pros versus Joes. So the show was awesome. Like I remember Jenny Finch. I remember, Clyde Drexler was on there, I feel like. Just a whole bunch of different pros, ended up being on the show, and they would compete against these people. And, every once in a while, the people would get lucky, make a nice play, do something crazy. But for the most part, it was just who could not get wrecked the most. It was Jenny Finch whipping in 72-mile-an-hour heaters from underhand and K-ing these people up. And it was just something to watch. It was definitely entertainment. It used to be on Spike. I'm sure there's clips on YouTube. I'm sure there's stuff on TikTok even of it. I would be shocked if there isn't. But if there isn't, I feel like people should know about this show. So I hope it finds the right section of TikTok this week when I post a little clip about Pros versus Joes. Just quickly, I think it would be so cool to see guys like Shaq or D Wade or Terrell Owens or Chad Ochocinco, A-Rod, Jeter, Big Papi. Could you imagine they got those guys to come in? And you've seen Chad Ochocinco, you've seen T.O. like in the Canadian Football League or Arena Football, wherever he was playing. You've seen those guys still do some athletic stuff. So it would be crazy to see them compete, against a 30-year-old accountant who wants to be on the show, who wants to try to compete against these guys. I think that would be such a cool, what up, Pick? That would be such a cool thing and such a cool show to bring back. Last thing I got for this week's episode. I know these solo episodes, I've just been going for around 25, 30 minutes. That's kind of my plan each week. And then, the ones with the guests tend to be a little bit longer. So I'll just continue to do that. The last thing that happened to me this week that I just thought was funny, and I just wonder if anybody else ever has ever had this experience. But I'm shopping through Walmart. I grab a cart and just go through, do my groceries like I normally do. Wasn't that much stuff in the cart. So when I, got my bags, I didn't need to walk the cart all the way to the car. So I just went to go put it back by all the rest of the carts. When I did this, there was another lady, probably about, maybe my parents' age. So I don't know, got to be around, 50s ish, I would say. I'm walking the cart over and she looks at me and, I'm just ready to, and she looks at me and she just goes, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll take yours. Don't worry, thank you. I'll take yours. No problem." And, I was walking away. I was like, damn, that's like kind of one of the biggest compliments you can give a person is to take their shopping cart after they used it. Just because so many people are so weird about the shopping cart. I see them wiping it down. I see like people, bringing wet wipes, hand sanitizer, all that stuff. And just to see a lady just basically trust that I'm clean enough for her to take my cart. It was just a stupid thing that happened to me that I was like, damn, that's actually a decent little compliment if I think about it from a certain angle. But yeah, that's just a stupid thing that happened to me at Walmart this week. And everybody, that's really all I got. I talked a little football, got into some baseball stuff in the beginning. I'm going to bring it, with a guest next week. Just haven't decided who I want to ask. I got a couple people ready to go, if I ever need them. So I'll see who I want to have on next week, get into a good show, obviously do that guest song of the week. I hope people don't take that too seriously. I just do it for shits and gigs. I think it's hilarious. It usually puts the guests in a good mood and kind of gets the show off to a good start. So if you're, enjoying these episodes, let me know if you want me to talk about something, go into something baseball related. If you guys want to hear a story, know about a certain thing that happened to me, I'm pretty much an open book. So anybody listening, if you guys are interested in hearing, my perspective on something, feel free to, shoot me a DM or comment on a video on any of the social media platforms. It's the Iron Barn Podcast everywhere. TikTok, Instagram. I haven't really posted anywhere else besides those two spots. I threw up my first episode on Rumble, and I'll continue to throw up there. But yeah, Instagram and TikTok is really where you're going to find most of the content that I'm putting out, as well as obviously Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So give me some follows there if you're enjoying the show and you're listening. Been getting some okay numbers, and I know a lot of my players that I work with have been listening, so I appreciate everybody listening. And I'm just going to keep pumping it out. I'm really enjoying doing it. Something I look forward to doing. Just kind of gives me a chance to, talk about some of the cool stuff that I think is going on in sports, and also kind of relive some stuff that went on in my life. And also, I really love just talking with those people. I'm kind of hoping to get to the point where I can have some people that I've never met before on the show. And I think I could do that right now. If I reached out to some people on social media, and, just asked them if they wanted to tell their story for about 20, 30 minutes, I think a lot of people would be down to do that. So I'm going to be bringing it with the guests. I'm going to be reaching out to different people, but I do want to kind of go down my list of people that I know that I've wanted to be on the show. And then we'll kind of go from there and see where this show brings us. So next week, yeah, like I said, tune into that guest episode. Follow me on everything. It's the Iron Barn Podcast and all that stuff. Haven't had too many people watching on TikTok for, I would say, the last 10, 15 minutes. But we had a decent amount there in the beginning. I think it got up to like 160 something people watching me live record the episode. So if you end up being interested in the show, definitely subscribe in all the places, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Like I said, I appreciate it. So thanks for listening to this week's episode of the pod, and later.